story on Times Now. Can an Indian be an outsider in his own country? But such is the state of parochial politics in Kashmir that unimaginable xenophobia is being spewed. For the first time since the abrogation of Article 370, electoral rolls of Kashmir have been updated to give a vote to all adults who reside in the Union territory. To the existing 76 lakh, now 25 lakh more voters have been added in the biggest leap towards Sabka Kashmir. However, parties from the valley have in fact expressed fear that outsiders are now going to try and manipulate the political situation. They will upset the status quo politically in the valley by exercising their franchise.
मैं बिल्कुल वसूख से कहता हूं और मैं अपने साथियों को, सारी पार्टियों को कहूंगा कि इस सिस्टम को रोको, नहीं तो आपको ये जो यूपी और बिहार के लोग जो हैं ये खा जाएंगे। यहाँ क्राइम पहले ही बढ़ रहा है, रोज नया नया क्राइम मतलब वजूद में आ रहा है।
This is the last nail in the coffin of electoral democracy here. जम्मू कश्मीर एक लेबोरेटरी बन चुका है बीजेपी के लिए। यहाँ वो तजुर्बा करते हैं, उसके बाद बाहर जाके उसको अप्लाई करते हैं। और जितना भी जो भी कुछ जम्मू कश्मीर में हो रहा है, ये इस फसाद में हो रहा है कि हम जम्मू कश्मीर को मुख्य धारा का हिस्सा बनाना चाहते हैं। हम इसका इंटीग्रेशन करना चाहते हैं कंट्री के साथ।
We sincerely hope that the Chief Election Commissioner of Leh and Ladakh is working to establish free and fair elections in J&K rather than cementing or ensuring hike in number of voters for one particular party.
Now, while the mainstream parties of the valley are denying them a ballot, Islamist radicals have also threatened voters who are not Kashmiris with a bullet. Watch this poster circulated by a terror outfit that warns of increased targeted attacks on non-locals. While a number of threats have been issued in this poster, saying that we know that this is the reason behind targeting non-locals and pundits will accelerate attacks, and it will be hell for non-locals if they want to live like scapegoats, then start counting the bodies. That is what the TRF has said. But for each attack of the opposition, there is a clear counter based on facts. Here's what sources in the Election Commission have said. They have said that 5,000. All right. In fact, let's go straight across to our debate. Joining us now is Shazia Almi, spokesperson of the BJP. A suspended Congress leader, Sanjay Jha, is also with us. Let me first ask you, Shazia Almi, is there an effort to try and change the demography of Jammu and Kashmir?
Well, not at all. But my question is that all those people who spoke about democracy and the inclusion, why would they want to others and other castes and people who've been living in the state? Why should they be kept out of the processes of elections and be denied the right to cast their vote? If there is a process and that has been done fairly to include voters, so how does it matter that are we going to look at the religion of the voter and the party to which they will vote or not vote before we can think of a fair way to not even gerrymander as they call it in the US, but delimitation here to include more voters, and which has been the purpose of the commission. And now that the demographics are changing and Mehbooba Mufti and the likes of her feel, the Gupkar lobby, so to speak, that they in some way could face a backlash. They would question the process and question other Indians and want to deny their right to franchise. I think that is hypocrisy.
Sanjay Jha.
And I don't know why people are not raising this issue.
Sanjay Jha, if it applies to the rest of the country, why shouldn't it apply to Jammu and Kashmir?
A valid question. I think the point that we need to probably recognize that this is basically a manifestation of the trust deficit that the government has not been able to build with the politicians or the public in Jammu and Kashmir. Now, let me tell you that I agree with you that every Indian citizen, wherever he or she lives, must have a right to vote. Having said that, I mean, there are, obviously overt concerns and apprehensions that you heard from Mehbooba Mufti, who was earlier, by the way, a partner with the BJP in a government. So the BJP should be aware of that. The second point is even the National Conference is actually called for an all party meet, simply because there is this concern that the BJP railroads itself, that it is trying to, very blatantly change their demography, that ultimately the intention is to actually remove the Kashmiri culture through an outsider, kind of amalgamation into the state. Should it happen spontaneously and by a natural process, or is the government actually trying to force things without consulting other parties? I think it's for the BJP and the central government to understand that Kashmir is sensitive. Article 370 is still in the Supreme Court. We don't know what the Supreme Court will say on that finally. But more importantly, I mean, it's a state where the people are, frankly speaking, everyone, in my opinion, wants to be and is part of a very inclusive India. And therefore, if one is not going to engage and, build trust through dialogue or through confidence building measures, you will find these responses from politicians.
Ahmad Ayaz, why the fear mongering? Are people from Bihar and Uttar Pradesh not Indians? Why can't they vote in Jammu Kashmir like they do in the rest of India?
Good question. Very good question. Padmaja, but look at the
Just a second, Mr. Jha. I'll just bring in Mr. Ahmad Ayaz and come back to you. Ahmad Ayaz.
So, Padmaja, it is not just rumor mongering. You'll have to understand that Kashmir is, J&K is not as normal as any other state in the country, like Bihar, UP, Punjab. I mean, it has to be, it is treated accordingly, and it has to be treated differently. It has seen the pain, it is in pain, and without diagnosing and, to treat it well and give the proper treatment, we are adding to the pain. When Article 370 was abrogated, that time it was, apprehensions were expressed that it's heading towards and then that was clarified, no, the 370 removal is not just for that. It is only to see that the J&K comes is normalized and it goes on the development way, and then the corruption is removed and so many other things, militancy ends. I mean, these are the factors given that time. And
yeah, it's a sensitive area, Shazia Ilmi. The least that could be done is do proper consultation with all the stakeholders rather than thrusting this change on them and creating a sense of insecurity.
So I'm very happy about one thing that my fellow speaker, Mr. Ayaz, actually admits to the fact that this is a different state and there is a different kind of a pathos there and things are not normal. So how did we come to this and how do we normalize this? I think exactly for these reasons and more, this must be done. So some people have made sure that things are not normal. And why is that so? Because there has been the status quo had to be challenged. And we all know how all parties voted in the parliament on Article 370. Some, of course, they gave their conditions. Some went to, there are people who went to court asking about the process whereby it was adopted. But we all know how everybody voted for abrogation of Article 370. Mr. Ayaz, don't you think this is a very problem that you just mentioned? That it is, why is it not normal? Because the perverse situation and leadership the Kashmiri populace found themselves dealing with, having a little choice. I think there has to be a matter of choice also for them. And also, instead of having the same old stalemate and a politics of majboori that we saw in terms of people voters, don't you think there should be more voters, more inclusiveness, and we cannot deny any Indian the right to vote? So are you saying that Kashmir is only for Kashmiris, and on the one hand you talk about what is Kashmiriyat, So does it not again become a matter of religion? Because clearly,
it raises the doubts and it raises doubts about the working of the government and that too of BJP. Why? Because as I said that when Article 370 was abrogated and people expressed these apprehensions that they are going to change the demography by getting people inside, outsiders inside, and then it was clarified that time, no, it is not that, it is for a different purpose. And today it is proved to be correct because BJP wanted it to be utilized for their political purposes, for their vote bank, for their elections. So that's what I say. How will people accept all this? See, it is not that if I go to Delhi and vote there, sit there, stay there, vote there, it is normal. But in your case, it is a planned act to see that as if you are at war with the Kashmiris. That's the worst part of it. Because you are thrusting things on the Kashmir, on the Kashmiris, without knowing their sentiment, without knowing their feelings, without considering their part. So that being a problem.
No, sir.
No, you may say so.
No, sir, it's not as simplistic. This war cry cannot be used. This war cry cannot be used. Kashmiri sentiment. Kashmiri Pandits had the sentiment too. And you think the people who have been kept out of the system, whether you look at the Safai Karamcharis and others, do you think they don't have sentiments? Do you think the Dalits don't have sentiments? Do you think all others who've been working there, living there should be denied this? What do you mean? The sentiments belong to only one religion and one particular community? I don't know what you're talking about, sir. I think it's very unfair that I have to even discuss this with you. I think there's a big problem with what you're arguing, sir. I think you must not go further than this because you're going against the very ethos of forget Kashmiriyat and Ruhaniyat and Jamhuriyat, but of Insaniyat. You know, you are stamping upon so many principles that I don't want you to.
A Kashmiri Muslim or a Sikh, people have no problem with that. But when you are trying to get people, see Kashmir, just tell me Kashmir is a tourist place. Do you mean that a tourist coming for 15 days here, he will be given the citizenship, ordinary citizenship to vote? Or a labor who is a seasonal labor coming here and you will give him a status of a ordinary citizen and to vote? I mean, this is a very ridiculous.
Let's not trivialize the debate, Ayaz ji. Let's not know. It's very ridiculous. It's most ridiculous that you have reduced the entire conversation to tourists going there. Well, the tourists who visit Kashmir are citizens of India. One, that they are being offered citizenship is a claim I will want to challenge and dispute. The fact of the matter is people who have been living there, who want to live there and consider it their state, must have a right to vote there, as is the matter all over. There is cross movement across states all over India, and wherever people make it their home for a certain number of years, it becomes their home. They make their voter cards and Aadhaar cards accordingly, and then they get the right to exercise adult franchise, irrespective of the fact that their grandparents
just tell me the permanent residents of the Jammu and Kashmir who have been all the way enjoying the rights, the safeguards on their service and their lands. How do you expect all of a sudden people to come from outside and get settled or get votes? Or I mean, there are a lot of apprehensions being expressed. And today I can tell you, yes, those are valid. Today you are giving a vote right, and tomorrow you can do something else also.
People are used to.
Tomorrow you can do something else also. When the case is the Supreme Court, you should have respect to that also.
To reduce it to saying that tourists will be made voters, you also know that's a very facetious argument. But to say that your entire state will be taken over and now people from Bihar decide what happens to your state, that is how India functions. We travel across the country there are people from Bihar, from UP, from Maharashtra who are voting in Delhi, in Punjab, in Tamil Nadu, in Kerala and vice versa. Because we're all one country and we vote there. I'm sure there are people from Jammu and Kashmir who live in other parts of the country and they vote there as well. What is this ridiculous argument?
In the case, perhaps there would not have been a point. But the question is being done in a planned way. In a normal way, if a Kashmiri goes outside and gets a job there and gets a voter card, that's a different thing. But in respect of, in case of Kashmir, it is a planned thing being done to see that the demography is changed. That's the whole trouble.
Well, that is, sir, exactly what you are trying to project it as, except this is the process and it happens anywhere in the country. You are the people who are trying to project it as some kind of devious conspiracy to change the demography. However, it is very simply process. I'm going to leave it at that. Thank you very much, both gentlemen. Shazia Almi for joining me. Quick break.